Welcome, everyone. Episode 10 of the Dolphins Make Me Cry podcast. I'm your host, Steve Giordano, as we get ready for the Dolphins at Patriots, the 1-3 in the AFC East Bowl. And crazy enough, two of the worst teams in football. We would have thought one of them would have been, but not so much the other. And it's getting more depressing each and every week. So I said at the end of last week I wanted to try and be more positive today, but it's going to be a little tough. But I think towards the end of the episode, I'm going to get more of the positivity, just a little bit of a spoiler. So Dolphins go down at home Monday Night Football to the 0-3 Titans, 31-12, in a game that I've watched preseason games be more interesting. And there's so many problems, holes, issues on this team right now. And a lot of people, not smart ones, want to act like, well, you don't have Tua, you don't have your starting quarterback, and that's your issue. And is it a big issue? Yes. But to me, ironically enough, it's probably number 4 on the totem pole. And here's where I'm going to start. This team has 37 penalties in 4 games. They're almost averaging 10 a game. They had 10 on Monday night. They had 11 in Seattle. It's absurd. They had, in one drive, they had 3 illegal shift motions. Like, what are we doing? And again, it goes to coaching, and I got to throw it on Mike McDaniel, because when you're sitting here running this offense for Tyler Snoop Dogg Huntley, and you didn't, I guess you dumbed it down, right? Because the guy's only going to be able to absorb so much in, the 14 days he's been with the team. So in this game, you have just people moving and dumb penalties. And then on top of it, and it goes to physicality, which is always going to be my theme, you have 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 where you're running end arounds to Tyreek Hill on 4th and 1. Really, bro? Like, what are you doing? And I say that, but I actually kind of know what he's doing. And here's what he's doing. He knows he didn't build a physical O-line. He knows he was out Teron Armstead, who's probably the only physical player, for the most part on the line. Maybe we'll give Austin Jackson a little bit of a break on that. But long story short, we're sitting here running all these gimmicks and gadgets and end arounds, and we just can't line up and mano-a-mano push the line in front of us with a fullback to get a first down on 4th and 1. And this is like death by 1,000 paper cuts, because it's all these little things that they don't do well as a football team that literally compound and compound and compound. And then when you don't have Tua to Tyreek and the big play and the home run, when you don't have that available, you're dead man walking. And that death by 1,000 paper cuts, it leads you to the lack of situational awareness in a game and the lack of complementary football with your defense. Right now, looking at the stats, I was looking at them before. Defensively, they're actually 6th in the league in defense. Now, that will not last, and I'm going to get into that. They're 6th in defense. They're 26th in offense, 23rd in passing, and 25th in rushing. And maybe you're getting lucky because you're playing the Patriots, who are 32nd in offense. I don't know how anybody's actually worse than us. That's kind of tough to do. And 32nd in passing, right? But when you look at this team and these games and the way they play themselves out, one, they're crazy predictable. Even if we look at the last 3 years of the good and the explosive offense, it's been home run or bust. This team, I need to look at stats and maybe count this up. I don't know how many sustained drives they've gotten 1 to 2 new sets of downs and first downs to then at least then not be able to convert to a first or a field goal or a touchdown, to then actually punt the ball away, to play some field position at certain points of the game and pin a team deep giving your defense a leg up with a team starting a drive within their own 10, 5, near the goal line, within the 20. And if I'm the defensive coordinator on this team, and I know Vic Fangio, everybody, they vilified him, and, the team didn't like him, and the players didn't like him. The dude had a top 10 defense, and he had injuries. It was what it was at the end of the year. You can only do so much, but Mike McDaniel as an offensive play caller does absolutely nothing to help his defense. Absolutely nothing. If I was a defensive player on this team, I would say, hey, bro, this ain't Madden. You don't need to go on every fourth down. And again, aggressiveness on fourth down, overall, not mad at it. But it's situationally. It's almost like he goes for fourth downs to be full of himself at some point. There's other times now it's desperation. Let the game breathe, bro. Pin a team deep. Let your decent punter, and honestly, I don't even think we know enough of this punter because he's never consistently in a game, right? He's in and out the way it works with the way they score, or at least last year. And there's no flow to the game, and it's basically hey, we got to drive. Let's go run 3 plays, and then it's 4th and 1 or 2. And no matter where it is, we're going to go for it, even if it fucks over the defense. That's literally what they say. And then what happens? You put the defense on the field too much. They lose time of possession. And from a defensive perspective, they're doing enough, but there's a sieve in the middle of the D and the D line because they don't have enough good bodies to stop the run. And if you're playing this team, and when they start playing some of these upper echelon teams, look out. They are going to run down your throat because you can only get so many snaps out of Calais Campbell at 38 years old. The guy plays his ass off. And you can only get so much out of Zach Sealer. And other than those two, and Brooks at linebacker, and we had Long out at linebacker last week, other than that kind of little core, there ain't nobody stopping a run. There ain't nobody setting the edge. And, big prayer up to Jalen Phillips, who gets a knee injury on Monday night. Really, really sucks. Good dude, hard worker, busted his ass to come back from the torn ACL last Black Friday in November, and comes back playing pretty well, ahead of schedule, and now he's out for the year with a tear in his, I believe his meniscus in his knee. Just totally sucks. Makes you even thinner at pass rush. Don't know when you're going to get Bradley Chubb back. The IR window is now open, but he did not. They didn't open up his practice window, which kind of tells you, which we kind of all knew. I mean, you're probably talking late October. Maybe you get him back. The Cardinal game. The week of getting Tua back. So now you're really thin at pass rush, and that's a problem because you were thin at it to begin with. So now you're really thin there, and you can't consistently stop the run. You're not going to, you're going to bend, don't break for only so long, and you're really, you sit there and you say, hey, you gave up 31 points in a game. Your defense didn't play that bad, but at the end of the day, the league is set up for scoring, right? Your defense is only going to do so much. You need a defense that can have a couple turnovers a game and a defense that can make stops at opportune times. But at the end of the day, the NFL, you ain't shutting anybody out. It ain't going to happen. Unless you're playing our offense, then you have a really good job because God knows we can't do anything offensively. Losing a 31-12 game to an 0-3 team who, by the way, had their backup quarterback in. And isn't it amazing? And we'll go, not to jump around here, we'll go now to the quarterback situation. Everybody in the media, I said it last week, the game, Huntley, it's not his fault. The guy's been here for 5 minutes. And you can see who he is. He's a running guy. He's an athletic guy. He's not a very accurate guy. His arms, he can make some throws. He had the 3 deep, shots to Tyreek, couldn't connect. Two of them had a shot to. The other one had no shot to. And he is what he is. And again, you lost these games in March, April, May, June, July, when you didn't say, hey, we need to have some insurance for Tua. That's where you lost these games. Now you're just desperate. And then yesterday you have Thompson basically tomorrow, who will be the backup, and he can barely throw the ball. He's got broken ribs, and you're going to have Huntley start. And then you cut Tim Boyle, which, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, fine. You would think you'd keep him as an emergency QB because you have two now and one has broken ribs. So God help him, he doesn't get hurt. I guess you really needed that roster spot of another, guy who can't tackle or can't make a block. But now you're going into it in that dynamic. And it's just, you watch the offense and it's coaching. Like Mike McDaniel, the play designer, great play designer, but now like when it's getting tight, you can't adjust and you can't do anything to make a difference. And then let's throw it into the run game, which is a product or a lack thereof of this line, and it's non-existent because you've had no Mostert, which he's going to play against the Patriots. Fine, it is what it is. I'm sure they'll have a better run game tomorrow, but ultimately the line is just not good enough. Now, the hope and the positive spin of this, I guess, moving forward, 1-3, it is what it is. Tomorrow you'll get Teron Armstead. You'll get Raheem Mostert. You'll also get Odell Beckham for the first time, who practiced this week. Can Odell Beckham be a formidable third option? And, I mean, at this point, with the way the quarterback situation looks like, I mean, any first, second, or third option is basically the first, because you're just getting nothing out of anybody because you cannot get any traction and you cannot get the ball in playmakers' hands to actually make plays because you can't push the ball downfield, and they know you can't. So you get Beckham. So there are some reinforcements here that hopefully will help you. Do I think they'll have a better productive offensive day? I mean, you scored 12 points. I mean, and the touchdown you scored was a desperation touchdown. So, I mean, I guess anything more than that, sure, okay. But the biggest problem from a backup quarterback perspective right now is if you have a backup and he's limited and they're gonna draw the safeties in because they know there's no fear of going deep like there is with Tua and Tyreek, and then you're not physical on your line and you can't run and you're an outside zone running team, you're basically just, you're kind of dead man walking because you're sitting there and you just have to run outside zone because you cannot line up against a good D line and knock them off the line of scrimmage to run straight ahead north and south. And it's just the fundamental flaw. And we've seen Dolphin teams like this before. This is nothing new. And what it boils down to is you got to now get creative. But when you take that element away, the creativity becomes actually very well. And in fairness to Mike McDaniel, but you built this animal, like you built this offense. Now it's got to be dumbed down. I guess you could say they dumbed it down last week for Tyler Huntley. I mean, the guy, look, that offense is a lot to learn. He's only going to do so much. Could we have seen probably some more designed runs? We saw a few. You can obviously see he can make some plays with his legs. It opens up a new dynamic. What I think we need to see tomorrow, and it's another glaring hole, is the tight end position. Could we please, for the first time in 3 years since Mike Gesicki, actually get production out of a tight end? You signed multiple. You made it seem like in the offseason this was going to be a big bone of contention to get tight ends involved. And you literally have, I think they had 2 targets last week, which was in garbage time. What are we doing? Julian Hill, Jonnu Smith, Tanner Connor, Durham Smythe. How is nobody open? So you mean to tell me you got Tyreek and Waddle, even with the quarterback situation the way it is, and there's no other guy, third receiver, tight end, who's ever wide open? I don't understand how it's possible. And hopefully tomorrow, and look, Beckham is what he is. He's a 3 at this point, and it's fine. But if he could give you anything, if he could give you a few catches, if he could give you a spark, if he could get attention, maybe that then even opens more. And maybe the whole Mostert and Teron Armstead and a little bit more strength in your line, hopefully that opens things up offensively. But I mean, I have to see it to believe it at this point, because we just haven't seen it. I mean, this is pretty much right now. This is as bad as it gets. And last week was a must win. Tomorrow is, I mean, your season's over to me if you lose tomorrow. Now I get it. 2021, whatever it was, they were at 1-7. They won 7 in a row. They were 8-7, and they lose the game in Tennessee. And and Flores have a fight and the whole thing, and they miss the playoffs. But you cannot sit here and go down to a team that reality is, I mean, if you want to say they're worse than you, as bad as you, it's probably somewhere in the middle. You can't lose this game. Now, we said that last week when you played an 0-3 team on Monday night at home, but you can't lose this game. We need to hope and pray you can get out of this game at 2-3. You got a bye week, and then you go to Indy, and then we pray, and then you get Tua back the next week, because that's what it's forecasted, and that's a whole nother story. He's seen neurologists this week, and, you know, he's going to play. I mean, anybody who thinks he's not going to play is an idiot. He's going to play. He's going to come back. The question is, will they be, 3-3, or will they be, 2-3, or will they be, or whatever the numbers would be, or are they going to be 1-5? Because then it's a whole nother ball of wax of, hey, why do you bring him back at 1-5? And it'll be a lot of chatter. He's coming back though against Cardinals. You can book that, because that's happening. So now this particular game, because last week's game, I mean, we just need to, like much of this season, we need to bury it. We need an exorcism. We need something, because this is now getting, I mean, they're on life support, in my opinion. Now it's early, but early only goes so far. You got to win these games, particularly AFC games. So now, Dolphins in New England. New England, rebuilding team, Gerard Mayo, rookie head coach, making mistakes, doesn't have a lot of talent. Going with Jacoby Brissett, that we know very well, who's, the most middling quarterback you could ever have. They're, like we said, their offensive ranks. They had some dissension this week in the certain guys calling other guys out, kind of saying that they're freelancing to try and make plays defensively. I will say this. The Patriots, to me, and a guy, Mayo, who played with them and knows the Patriot way and the discipline, it's very hard for me to actually pick this game, because on one end of the coin, I feel, I don't want to say necessarily they will be better coached, because McDaniel can certainly do some things. I think it's a matter of better coach from the sense of it, from a discipline perspective. But yes, at the end of the day, sometimes the talent can overcome the discipline, right? Because you can do everything right, but it takes talented football players to make enough plays in a game to win. I think this could be very tight, because I believe that Mayo will run a tight game. They're at home. They have some pride. They just don't have a ton of talent. And could you see in this game Drake May at some point? They're definitely slow pitching them to kind of get on the field, which I think makes sense. Let these guys develop. I think these quarterbacks, the organizations fail the quarterbacks more than the quarterbacks fail the organizations. You're seeing a lot of that in a lot of these guys in their second go-round, Sam Darnold and some others, where they they get the experience that they've had and they fail, and then they get to a whole new fresh start, new coaching, different dynamic, and then they're just further along because it takes time to really get to that place as a quarterback where it's all clicking for you and it's all making sense because there's so much coming at you, particularly if you're young like that. And then a lot of these guys go into terrible, piss poor organizations, and then they wonder why they fell. So this is going to be a very interesting game, and one, I mean, I need to see different from the Dolphins. Now, do I think I will? In my heart of hearts, I don't, and I'll tell you why. Because they're very predictable. Even in winning the last few years, they've been very predictable, and they're not a smart football team. Sorry to say it. You're just not smart. You do not play smart, fundamental football. You don't. And you haven't. And then on top of it, your coach now is getting roasted because there's this loosey-goosey ship type of a component where you're looked at as soft, you're looked at as you don't practice hard, you're looked at as there's no accountability, and when things are going well, all of this stuff is kind of like it's there, but it's completely swept under the rug. And winning masks all. When you're losing, people are starting to look at it. And now you have this aging roster that's got injuries like everybody has, and you're looking for answers and you're looking for help, and hopefully the help comes in some of these guys coming back. But ultimately, the game plan and the in-game management are just crushing you. And then the fact that you have your, third string quarterback, whatever you want to call it, that's hurting you. But the reality is this team, when you have your backup in, you shouldn't fall off a cliff. You should not be as good. It should be more of a struggle, and it's grinding it out and more coaching and more creativity and a lot of different things. But you shouldn't fall off a cliff. And again, the reasons they're losing are like so un-Tua related. Like Tua would have lost last week. He would have lost in Seattle. He clearly basically was one of the biggest reasons you lost the Buffalo game. And you should have lost the Jaguar game. He was obviously a reason you won it with a big play, but he had a good game that day. It wasn't like, off the charts. But now when you look at this, you just kind of say to yourself, like, when are they going to actually fix the problems? I'll believe it when I see it, personally. I mean, you are what you are. If you're a 10 penalty a week team in pre-snaps and motions and special teams and poor situational football, like that's who you are. That's what you do. Do I think Mike McDaniel tomorrow is going to come out and on fourth down, say, you know what? Let's punt it and let's play a little bit of field position. I don't. Because he's kind of is what he is. Now, maybe at some point he learns, but again, I'll believe it when I see it. So it's going to be very interesting. Let's check what's the latest over-under of this game tomorrow. And it's low. Let's see exactly what it is. I believe it was at 37. And right now, Dolphins, Pats. Where are we at here? I got to find it. Dolphins, Pats for tomorrow. Dolphins -1. Wow, we're down to 35.5. Wow. Craziness. Low. And the Dolphins getting one on the road against New England. So, that being said, Steve Gio's Week 5 Miami Dolphin pick in the league where they play for pay. Dolphins in Foxborough, man, what a difference some of these years makes. All those years the Patriots dominated and the Dolphins were kind of mediocre, but then the Dolphins would win a lot of the games and you had a lot of excitement and some pretty damn good games over the years. Now we get the rebuilding Pats at 1-3 against the just wolfing, injury-riddled, poorly coached, poorly managed, poorly anything you want to say Miami Dolphins. And we got them getting 1 point, and we got an over-under 35.5. So, prediction. And this has been hard. I think I'm actually predicting this one on the fly right now. Last week I picked the Dolphins, and I was dead wrong, and I really didn't want to pick them. This week, here's what I think. I think the Dolphins will win a game 20-14, take the under slightly on the 34. I think Huntley, a second week with the offense. I think some of these guys coming back, like I mentioned, Armstead and Mostert and Kendall Fuller at corner. I think they're going to understand the desperation. I think they're going to play a tighter game. I think they're going to be able to make a little bit more plays. I think you're going to get Beckham involved. I think you will get tight ends involved. I think you run the ball a little bit more. I think finally McDaniel might learn some lessons on how to actually get the most out of the particular roster he has. I think the Pats are going to play you hard. I think the Pats are going to play you smart. But I think ultimately we'll do a couple of things. Maybe get a turnover here and there with Brissett to win a game 20-14, live to fight another day, get ourselves to 2-3, limping into the bye week, and then coming up in Indianapolis a week after that. So that's prediction, 20-14 Fins. Please let's win this game because this is getting really sad and really scary, and we need it. We'll see you next week. Let's go, Fins.